Okay, so now we're going to specifically talk about content and language integrated together. Well, you know how sometimes for your practice lessons, maybe the teacher tells you, all right, the topic is pollution and the language is first conditional. So how do you combine these two things? How can you actually put them together? Well, the question you have to ask yourself is, in what context, in what realistic situation would I need to use this language when talking about pollution? So I imagine the scenario, I imagine the situation and say, okay, where, in what context, in what format would I need to do this? So, well, maybe, probably, I would have to speculate about the future of the planet in a conference. I am at UN and I am giving some forecast on the possible future if we don't do what we are supposed to do. So let me see if I can share here the screen and go to Classroom. Here in Classroom, we have a file that is how to put grammar and content together. So what should always ask ourselves when given a grammar item to teach is in what communicative context it would naturally appear. We shouldn't force the language into a situation that we like. No, it has to be something that flows naturally and that the students can see that that language means this or that because it's only logical that it would mean that, because this is what naturally happens in real life. Okay, for example, the grammar point, relative clauses. The topic, the military government in Argentina. What the heck? What am I going to do with this? So I ask myself, in what communicative context would I need to use relative clauses? So let's think. So I think we must use relative clauses when we define something or someone. If they are defining, of course, if the relative clause is defined. Or when we describe something or someone, giving peripheral information within the same sentence. So when we are describing, basically, defining or describing. Okay, so that's when we use it. Now, in what text format will we need to use such complex sentences? Well, probably in written reports or articles, maybe a presentation, because usually it's in formal scenarios. In natural conversations, sometimes we don't use maybe one isolated relative clause, but maybe in more formal text formats. Now, what kind of article, report, or presentation would I need to write to talk about the military government in Argentina and include descriptions like this? In what kind of article? Okay, probably an article that would have to describe and identify who was who in that period. So you see, I'm asking these questions and little by little I am like defining, what I must do. Okay, so I define who's who, I use relative clauses, I talk about the military government. Okay, but what for? What for? What is the purpose of this task? Why would I need to do this? Why would I need to do such a thing? In what realistic situation? How would it be meaningful or relevant to the students? Okay, this is what I think. Maybe we could ask students if they think they would be able to analyze whether our current government is a dictatorship or whether the Bolivian or Chilean or Venezuelan governments are dictatorships or not. How we could assess the development of such events using information from our past. So maybe that is, okay, we have a purpose now. We are studying who was who and what was what in the military government in Argentina in order to evaluate our current situation or in order to detect signs of dictatorship in different governments. So what would be life worthy of this topic? Hmm? I'm thinking that students would have to evaluate who might have been the most relevant actors of the period and state why. They would have to make a chart or graph. Okay, so this creates an opportunity because in life they are likely to have to evaluate government systems and the ethics in it, whether it's dictatorship or not. I have to do lots of insights to think whether this is the situation or not. And I might have to take action. Shall I vote for this candidate or not? Shall I make a stand against this or that or not? I have to be critical. Okay, so it is life worthy. Now, could I play the whole game? So I need to present the whole, make it worth playing, like this. I need to, like, I'm sorry, like what is life worthy of the topic. Present the whole, like present an example article or an example report. Ask them to produce opinions or descriptions. Always, so always go from the whole. Then work on the hard parts because I present from that whole. I present the language point and the vocabulary items, and then they have to practice. So they play on the hard parts. Uh, they play out of town because maybe they have to also evaluate and say what is what and who is who in the government of, I don't know, China. Learn from other players. Okay, let's compare what this group is doing. Let's compare what that group is doing. Play the hidden game, maybe by analyzing hidden motives of these people, the political atmosphere. Let's go beyond. Hmm? And we can also learn the game of learning to say, okay, well, how have I learned about all these things? What I have learned in this unit and how I have learned it, what strategies have helped me. This is, of course, metacognition. I'm going fast because, of course, you can read this yourselves. And we have already seen these topics. So here there's a grid that you can complete by answering the questions with these topics that probably you can have in your practice lessons. There are like 3 examples that I would like you to answer and complete. Okay, now let's talk about C.L.I.L. Let's talk about C.L.I.L. Let's go to Genially. I have here a presentation in Genially. After everything we have seen, I think that you're going to find C.L.I.L something quite understandable because it's about C.L.I.L means content and language, integrated learning. So we have seen, okay, we teach about the military government, that's the content, and the language is relative clauses. So we have all these 2 topics, these 2 things together, yes, and it's integrated. And sometimes I have more devotion on the language and sometimes I have more devotion on the contents because I'm also learning about the content. So let's have a look. Okay. So C.L.I.L is an educational approach in which various language supportive methodologies are used, which lead to a dual focused form of instruction where attention is given both to the content and the language. So, dual focused. Sometimes you focus a little bit on language, sometimes you focus more on the content. You are supposed to be teaching the content, which is the subject matter, like, I don't know, the Andes, the indigenous peoples in Latin America, colonial times, that would be the content. So you are supposed to be teaching that content and also to be teaching the language. Now, sometimes you need a vehicular language that can be English, or it can be Spanish, or it can be, I don't know, Guarani, or it can be whatever language students need to access the content. And of course, you need to do research, innovation, problem solving, and you need knowledge and skills. That's what you are acquiring here. That's what this education is about, to acquire knowledge and the skills. Okay. So, like I said, there is a vehicular language because sometimes you need to do some research or you need to make a decision or you need to, I don't know, understand something and you're working in groups. And sometimes that is done in the mother tongue, or suppose you're doing research and the research is in, I don't know, Portuguese. So you will have to access that information in Portuguese, use some tools, ask for help from someone who understands that language. I don't know. The focus there is on the information, and you can have any vehicular language you need to do that. You teach the subject matter with the vehicular language. The subject matter being the governments, the indigenous peoples, and so on and so forth. So sometimes you have more focus on the subject matter, sometimes you have less focus on the subject matter, and sometimes you have equal amount of focus. Okay. How to learn context. Okay. For content learning to be effective learning, students must be cognitively engaged. What does this mean, do you think? To be cognitively engaged? Well, it means that if it is cognitively demanding, if I ask them to analyze, to criticize, to evaluate, this is something that is going to be engaging. It's not something idiotic. It's not something flat. No, I need them to be into it, to be challenged. And of course, I need to use Bloom's taxonomy. Yes, all the levels of Bloom's taxonomy. And here in this graph, we have several domains, several dimensions. One is the factual dimension, yes, the conceptual and procedural. The conceptual is the concept, the knowledge, what you know or what you don't know. The procedural is the process, is the how you go about it, is what you do and how you do things. This is the knowledge dimension. And then you have the cognitive process dimension, which is all the levels that we have seen, remembering, understanding, etc. And here is the language triptych. The triptych means that okay, in C.L.I.L you have a linguistic progression of language learning and language using or usage because you learn the subject matter and you also acquire the skills in language, hopefully. So here you have the cryptic because suppose in the example of government systems and language and relative clauses, I say, okay, what is the language of learning? Meaning, what is the language that I intend my students to learn? Well, this would be relative clauses, okay? Now, what is the language for learning? For, that is, what do I need for learning? For the purpose of learning. So what do I need? Well, I need to ask questions like, how do you say blah, blah, blah in English? Or what does this word mean? Or can you tell me a synonym of blah, blah, blah? Oh, I don't quite understand this paragraph. So all this language is for learning. And then you have the language through learning. Any idea what this might be? Through learning. Well, this is all the language that comes up as you are going through the project. You are working, you are doing research, you are analyzing, you are solving problems, and there's language that maybe you didn't know and you come across it and you say, okay, now I would like to know what this is. So I write it down and I have learned it through the process of learning. Okay. Within a certain context, we must involve the 4Cs framework. So what are these 4Cs framework in the C.L.I.L classroom? Okay, we have the content, like we said, like the government systems. We have the communication because we need to compare languages in the government systems and we need to describe and identify who's who and what's what with the relative clauses. So we have the communication and we have to present it in the form of an article or a presentation. We have cognition because it has to be cognitively demanding. We are using Bloom's taxonomy, okay? And we have culture also, because culture tells me about everything. Imagine we are talking about government systems, we're talking about dictatorships. So we are evaluating governments in different countries in Latin America. So we are here working on the culture as well. So these are the 4Cs framework that have to be present when we create a C.L.I.L unit of work. So here we have the 4Cs dimension, yes, in a graph. Sorry, I clicked where I shouldn't have. All right, and here, so here is the planning, yes, of a unit of work. Let's have a look here. We pick a theme or the subject matter of the content, right? And that is, for example, the government systems. And we think about the 4Cs. And in the 4Cs, we have a look and we think about what we are going to include, okay? Where is culture in this scenario? What content exactly am I going to teach? What cognitively demanding tasks am I going to include in my plan? And what about communication? What is the language of learning, for learning, and through learning that I think are going to be present in this project? Now, when I think about this scheme of my unit of work, I have to take into account here the quadrant. What is this quadrant? Let's have a look. On this side, we have here low. I'm saying here because I look at the mouse, but you can't see the mouse. So in number one, this is low cognitive demand. So I'm not asking students to think that much. And there's also low linguistic demand. So at the very beginning, probably, of the unit, I might not have many new words or many challenging expressions to learn. And maybe students are not supposed to do anything so demanding cognitively. But what is my objective? That little by little, they go up and they go up in the cognitive ladder and they begin and they try to do more and more cognitively demanding tasks, yes, and also more and more linguistically demanding tasks. So I finish in number 3, right? Where I have high cognitive demand and also high linguistic demand. So at the very end of my unit of work, students are supposed to create something and use something spontaneously using their critical skills and also using the new language skills and making it visible and showing that they have actually incorporated it. Now, this all looks quite complicated, and it is, but the idea is that the difference with what we've been doing is that the topic is sometimes things that belong to other subjects. you know. So you have to see, suppose you're teaching second year students, so you have to see, okay, what are they learning in history? What are they learning in ethics? What are they learning in, I don't know, whatever? And maybe combine or talk to that teacher and try to make a unit of work that together. So sometimes the teacher of the subject would focus on that content. Sometimes you would work together. Sometimes you would work alone with the language part, or maybe you just take that content and use it adapted to the in the English classroom. Yes, because sometimes it's not possible, we know, to get together with other teachers. Okay, I think this is over, and I think it's quite clear. Now in classroom, you have an example class on C.L.I.L, and you have an example, no, sorry, you have a class on C.L.I.L, which is something that, oh yeah, you have an example of government systems, you have an example class of making a shindogu, an example grid of a class. Yes, this is what I expect in the final exam and in the next test and the next activity you will have to do. To present a unit, yes, with all the activities. This is a unit on the military government or the types of government. This was made for my daughter when she was 10. This was also made for my daughter when she was 10 or earlier, I think, younger. Well, this is the language, and well, you can take a look at these lessons as examples. And this we are going to do in class, okay, to prepare a clear lesson, because I want to see if you have actually understood these videos. But what I actually want you to do is to presentation on C.L.I.L, example C.L.I.L unit of work. Let me see what this is. Example C.L.I.L unit of work, colonial America. Okay, this is another class that you can have a look at and see the example and see the justifications in blue. And here highlighted are the cognitively demanding tasks. And what you have to do is read. Yes, this is the book on C.L.I.L, and read the first, let me see, first 3 chapters, I think. Let me see. Let's have a look at the content. Well, here the first chapter is very theoretical. Then here, number 3 is very important, connecting content and language. And this is number 4, is also very important, okay? Examples of curricular models. Yes, I think that you have to read until chapter 4. Okay, guys, I hope it's been clear. Please let me know if you don't understand something, okay? Sorry, the video was a bit long. Bye-bye. See you Monday.